I am Shane Davis, 20-year comic book veteran. I'm here with Yanzi, and today we are talking about what it would take to save the American comic book industry. And this isn't coming from me. This is actually coming from Mark Millar, famous scribe of things like Ultimates, Ultimate X-Men. He basically was a big part of the DNA that made up the MCU. So obviously creator-owned endeavors such as Kick-Ass and Kingsman, things like this. The dude's written his own ticket in Hollywood, coming from Marvel Comics. So let's get into it. What do we got here?
Mark Millar claims comic book industry is in the worst state it's ever been. Suggests comic book legends return to DC and Marvel in order to save it. So recently, Mark Millar was on the Thinking Critical channel, and he spoke about what he thinks is required to save the comic book industry as it is. Yes, there are people who are actually finally admitting that yes, DC and Marvel not going so well. He is suggesting that at least 20 comic book legends should return to DC and Marvel to do a minimum 2 years run in order to save the comic book industry. So there are even people, he has retail friends saying things like, oh, well, we need Mark Millar or Todd McFarlane to write Spider-Man. So, all right. Now, first of all, guys, it's a wonderful, noble idea to say, let's get 20 legends, maybe Walter Simonson, Frank Miller, Ethan Van Sciver, Chris Claremont, all these big names. The moment you say, you can immediately name all their classic and hit runs. But here's the thing. A lot of these guys, unfortunately, do not fit the so-called the DEI requirements at a lot of these companies now, because unfortunately, they are straight white males. And we all know that there has been this hiring policy to try and go for diversity checkboxes. After all, remember things like the Marvel Voices. Make sure if you do a book about indigenous people, you hire indigenous creators, which led to some pretty amazing artistic fiascos. But yeah. So when you have all these creators who are canceled, you want to say, hey, we need you guys to come back in and save this industry that kicked you out. It's like, all right, what is in it for me exactly?
And there's a lot more to the problem than that. If you look past the cancel culture and the SJW infestation, and you would literally have to quit hiring those artists or writers and like the T. Franklins. And even if T. Franklin still worked at Marvel, T. Franklin would be getting notes from Mark Millar, presumably, on what to do with their books and stuff like that. And you can see how this becomes like a situation that's like kind of like a stop go. It's not going to happen. The interesting part about this too is you would be asking creators to run back in a burning building, basically, to what? To save Marvel and DC from going under. Now, obviously, for some creators, there's a big incentive to do that, but others not so much. And this is kind of weird coming from Mark, to be honest, because Mark would have probably been one of the first creators to jump off a high point of his career at Marvel, coming in off of the Ultimate success and the MCU starting. But Mark would have been like a super creative guy that kind of went into his own creator-owned books that were first through Icon, which was an imprint of Marvel doing Kick-Ass and stuff like that, and then eventually just leaving flat out and going to Image. So it's weird coming from him because he would have been one of the first, in my opinion, to kind of leave and go his own way after being uber successful. So, okay, look past that. Let's say the game plan. Yep, a football huddle. Let's break. Let's go save Marvel and DC. Okay, so I'm going to take a pay cut. I myself am making the highest page rate I've ever made doing my own creator-owned books. You guys can go check out Axcend right now, funding on 9livescomics.com. But let's say I'm going to take a pay cut to go save Marvel and DC. For who? A bunch of DC employees, an evil corporation, retailers. I love me some retailers. Comic fans that love Batman and Superman, sure. But right now, we are at a point where the math equation is in front of everybody. Everybody that walks up and down the aisle at Walmart or Target, your big box stores, every average customer understands that if you work for Marvel and DC, that your creations are going to be a toy, it's going to be a t-shirt, it's going to be a movie, it's going to be all of these things above. And you have to ask, is there a creator that's got talent that's willing to subject themselves to that poor equation again. And what I mean by that is we have a long history now of creators, and not so long people knew Kirby and the Siegel and Schusters were getting effed over, but we have recent modern day creators again that weren't invited to premieres of things, that they're getting little to no money off their characters hitting the screen.
Well, for people who do not remember, there has been this whole slew of articles that came out from Hollywood in the past 2 or 3 years talking about how poorly treated people like Ed Brubaker, Jim Starlin, all these creators were treated by the MCU success. They made literal billions for Marvel with their creations. Jim Starlin famously did not get much for Thanos until Endgame, when he was basically offered some hush money to not talk too bad about his Thanos, his creation being used by the MCU and him not getting a fair compensation. After all, his creation, Thanos, was the big bad for the entire MCU phase 1 to phase 3. So seeing how badly these creators are treated, they go out there, make these multi-billion-dollar characters and storylines for Marvel and DC, and then they get what, a $5,000 thank you check from Marvel. It's like, yeah, no shit, I'm gonna go spend my time, give them the best ideas of my career, and leave nothing for my children.
Right. And some of it's just about getting kind of effed over. I know a lot of people look past that, but that is a big part. Is it worth stepping up to the plate if in the end you're just going to not be compensated, go through the embarrassment of everybody know you're not compensated? And it's almost like you don't want to see your creation, story idea, or anything like exploited like that. I mean, that's really what it kind of comes down to for a comic creator today if they want to work for Marvel and DC. So then that leaves the other option, and that's Marvel and DC Comics develop new talent. Well, good luck with that when you're having to hire off of diversity quotas. And then good luck with that also because you may look past some talent that just don't fit your quota for diversity. And then you're not hiring off of meritocracy and all of this. And basically that is the root of this. Whether it's old creators or new creators, basically Marvel and DC need to return to meritocracy. They need to return to a quality product being made and sold and consumed, and that's a lot of work, and it's a lot to catch up to for both companies at this point, because they really haven't been developing and nurturing talent over at least like the last 6 years. So they're 6 years behind at the least.
Well, the major issue here is that even if they wanted to say bring back all these guys here, and they say, yeah, we're going to really just pivot around and just focus on meritocracy, the most well-liked creators, we're going to hire them. It's like, okay, guys, can you afford to pay them what their work should be worth? Can you afford to compensate them when their work is in transmedia? The trouble is that DC and Marvel sales have been going down, which ultimately means their budgets are going to be cut as well. So I think they're basically going down what is called a death spiral.
Right. If you guys will hit like, subscribe, ring the bell for notification. Let us know your thoughts on Mark Millar here. Do you agree with him? Obviously, is it feasible? Probably not. And I'll leave you guys with a trailer for Axcend, our next smash hit release from 9 Lives Comics. You can go back it now. Descriptions down below.
I dream of a world carefully crafted, beautifully flawed. This is Axcend. In this game of life, there is one thing that determines a victor. A player's ability to grow. A player's ability to evolve. A player's ability to survive. My name is Dog. Choose to play. Choose to upgrade. Choose to level up. Choose to Axcend.